Hey everybody, it's your girl Lily Mae and Amber J, and we are here. Of course, you know Adam, the editor, is in the building, and we really have a special treat, and I'm going to call it a treat because we're living in some perilous times, and we're living in a time where we're sensitive to particular things, but we're not equally sensitive to more important things. And so with that, on that note, shout out to everybody that had events in support of Domestic Violence Month, which was the month of October. And also we want to acknowledge November as diabetes. And so with that being stated, let's jump in. Let's jump in, and this evening, we want to invite you to listen to the story of a young lady who is truly a champion, and I think she is going to speak to some things that have impacted individuals for years and years and generations to come. And that young lady is none other than Lady Heaven. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How's everybody else?
I'm doing just fine.
Always good.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're just going to dive right in because this is your platform. Motivational Brown Girls opens this Sipping Tea with MBG platform for you to tell your story.
That's awesome. Well, my name is Heaven, and I am 28 years old, and I am married to an amazing man of 4 years. And it's taken a long time to actually kind of be okay with myself enough to be confident and expect better, because we really should expect better when we're in kind of odd situations. And let me preface this by saying I hope that what I'm about to share helps other people. And I would also like to give a shout-out to my amazing husband, who has seen me in my darkest days and still has made the decision to love me. So like you said, I'll just dive right in. I'm not quite sure where to start, so I will just...
I would say start from the beginning, because the reality is that I think this is your time to tell your story, your complete story, such that if there is a parent out there who knows something is going on in their house, or if there is a child or teenager who's listening and is struggling with something, hopefully and prayerfully your story will touch somebody.
Okay. Well, this past couple of months, the world has been a little dark, and I say dark, but because nobody really knew how substantial this particular subject was. And the subject that I am going to be speaking about is sexual abuse, assault, and harassment. And this all kind of prefaced from the Me Too movement. That's been a big thing on Facebook. I don't know if your listeners have seen it on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But basically, if you haven't, Me Too was brought up when the Harvey Weinstein scandal kind of exploded, and actors, actresses, and basically the entire industry was tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody spoke, and I think the original posting said, if every woman or man posted Me Too, we could really see how big this movement was.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been sexually abused, and I decided to just post Me Too. I wasn't going to post a story. I wasn't going to do anything because I wasn't comfortable talking about it. And the reason why I wasn't comfortable talking about it is because my abuser was my father. And I thought if I told people that, yes, this occurred, yes, it occurred for longer, it wasn't just a one-time thing. It started when I was 9 years old and ended when I was 14 and got my first period. And I was a very angry individual. My mother, bless her, had really no clue that it was going on. And that's mostly because my father was not a very good person, and I say was because he's no longer in my life, not because he's dead. Well, I don't know if he is or not, but I say was because I cut him out of my life 10 years ago. And when I did that, when I cut him out of my life, I thought by cutting him out of my life, I was just going to get rid of the problem. And I might get emotional, so forgive me.
Your world. It's your world. Go ahead.
I said Me Too on Facebook, but I didn't speak his name. I didn't call him out, and I didn't share a story like the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of other individuals who have. And at 18 was when I finally told my mother what happened, and this was shortly after I cut him out of my life. Him and my mother divorced when I was 17 years old, and I think he was coming back, or he moved out of state, and he was coming back for my little brother's high school graduation. And that's just kind of where everything kind of fell apart. I then told my mother what happened. She felt awful, but the thing about it is my father was constantly losing jobs, so he was never the breadwinner for our family. And my mother at one point was working 3 jobs just to put food on the table and, electricity in the house. So I think I want to preface this by saying that if you suspect something, if you suspect that a family member, a friend, somebody is being abused, or if you suspect that they were abused, don't feel like you should have done something, because these people, they are what I like to call wolves in sheep's clothing. My father was a deacon at our church. He never swore in front of everybody. He acted like he was this stand-up guy. And I honestly, he would, when these incidences of abuse would occur, he would always tell me things like, nobody's going to believe you, or, I'm a deacon in the church. Are they going to believe some, snot-nosed little girl, or are they going to believe me? And I think the biggest, so don't feel guilty about not doing anything, or feeling like you should have done something, because you just don't know what people, and I feel like by saying that, people will kind of twist it and say, well, she says I shouldn't feel guilty for not doing anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, not doing anything if you don't know it's occurring. If you don't, what can you do, right?
That's true.
If you know it's occurring and you specifically don't say anything, then yeah, you're contributing to the problem. So these years from 9 to 14 were kind of foggy to me, I suppressed a lot in high school. I took my first drink at 14 years old. I was very, very, very angry, and rightfully so. And there was one point, I was 16 years old, where I didn't understand why I was so angry all the time. And I say angry because I would lash out at the smallest things. If my food wasn't cooked right, if my mom didn't wash my favorite shirt, just the smallest things, and they were huge to me. They were if my food was too cold, that was like I was done. I didn't want to eat. I was just done. And I didn't really recognize why I was so angry. But I remember at 16, I was at a party, and I had been drinking heavily, and a couple of guys were hitting on me, and I thought, cool, I'm 16, and I'm at a party, and these college guys are hitting on me. But then, I remember just feeling this overwhelming, feeling of regret and of just sadness. And I went home that night after consuming what I want to say is about a fifth of tequila. And I went into my mom's room, and I got her sleeping pills, and I consumed half of the bottle, expecting not to wake up. And I remember not necessarily being happy that, yes, my plan didn't work, but I was just kind of disappointed that it didn't work as well. But again, I suppressed all of these feelings. I just kind of internalized everything and put on a happy face, went to school. I was in AP everything, and so I had to make sure I was studying right, and I make sure I was, the straight A 4.0 student that my mom would be proud of. And I just kind of put it all to the back. And then at 17, when he did leave, I remember feeling relieved, but I was still so angry all the time. And at 18, when he came back, I let my mom know everything, and she immediately put me in therapy. Now, I still was very angry and did not recognize that the reason why I was angry is because my childhood had been taken away. My innocence had been taken away. The first sexual experience I had with somebody wasn't my husband, it was my father. And that's pretty messed up. So I went to this therapist for I want to say a month, and I told my mom I was fine, it's good, everything's better. I also come from a family that doesn't really like to talk much. We all kind of internalize things and then blow up about them later. So, my mom, thinking she was doing the right thing, sent me to a shrink who wasn't real. I don't want to trash anybody in that particular field, but I felt like she was just dancing around the issue. She wasn't really getting to the root of everything. And my feelings, memories, whatever you want to call them, kind of stayed dormant until I was 22, and I met the man who would later become my husband, and I realized that this guy is for real. I have real feelings for him, and I want to be his wife. And I realized that pretty early on into our relationship. And he'll tell anybody who will listen that he knew from the moment he laid eyes on me that I was going to be his wife. But we were out on a date once. We went to a bar, and I had 2 drinks, and we left the bar, and we drove to the top of an old parking garage. Nobody had been there. It's abandoned, and it was raining, and I thought that we were going to make out. And when we were starting to make out, like, it just all came flooding back. And I just start crying my eyes out. And my poor husband thought something, like, he had hurt me, that, you know, he was freaking out. And when I finally composed myself, I said, "How could you love anybody like me?" And his eyes got kind of narrow, and he said, "What do you mean? How could I love anybody like you?" And I said, I'm used goods. I'm trash. You need to just throw me away. Like, I don't deserve you. And he just was quiet, and then he said, "Do you want to go on?" And I just kind of let it all spill out. And the first sentence I said to him was, "My first sexual experience was with my father," expecting him to say, "All right, deuces, like, I ain't got time for you." But he listened to me tell very gruesome stories about my father. And I remember him, sorry, I'm getting really emotional. He took my hand and put his hand on my cheek, and he said, "How could I not love you?" And you've never met my husband. Anybody who meets us will say, "I'm fire, he is water. He is fire, I'm water." On paper, we shouldn't work, but we do. And the reason why we work is because he waited for me to sober up, because my inhibitions were quite, I had 2 drinks, whatever, but and then we talked about it more after. And he said, "Honey, I really think that you should go talk to somebody." And, of course, the settler, that's my maiden name, the settler in me it was like, "Absolutely not. No, it's fine. I talked about it a long time ago. It was handled." And he said, "Well, obviously it wasn't handled, so you should really go talk to somebody." And I was extremely frightened, and I felt extremely naked in that moment, emotionally, I guess. And I said, "Okay, as long as you're willing to go with me." And he went to the first initial appointment, but after that, he didn't go. And this therapist helped me. They did something called immersion therapy? No. Mm-hmm. Immersion therapy, I think, is what it's called, where basically I was hypnotized, but it wasn't really hypnotism, but it kind of, the way they preface it makes you feel like you're about to be hypnotized. And we went through several scenarios. Exposure therapy, that's what it's called. My husband's in the background helping me. And we went through several instances of where my father had abused me, and instead of clamming up about it, which is what I used to do, this therapist encouraged me to keep my mind open and to keep watching this movie play in my mind and just talk about what I'm feeling. And at one appointment, I actually got up and I started to swear. Like, every other word out of my mouth was F this and F that, and he's a piece of crap, and I shouldn't have to feel like I have to protect him. And it just felt so good, but I didn't have anybody to share this with besides my then boyfriend, now husband. And so I was talking to my therapist about this, and he said to start a blog. And I said, what's writing going to do? And he says, you speak so eloquently, and I've seen some of your writing on other things. Why not just write a blog for you? And so I started this blog called Confessions of a Survivor. And it started out with just me talking to whoever would listen about how I was still upset that this happened, about how I am there was an instance where my father tried to contact me, just all these, quote, confessions. And my first post only hit 50 people. And that's cool. It's not meant for them. But then to kind of circle this all the way back around, the Brock Turner case really, really, really pissed me off because he only did a month in jail for brutally raping a woman. And so I penned a letter to his victim. I don't know if she'll ever see it. She was never named, which is fine. That's her prerogative. But I penned a letter to his victim, and I put it out to Facebook. And everybody was like, you write so beautifully. You're awesome. Cool. Keep this up. Well, I then started writing a little bit more to Brock Turner, his family, I wrote a blog to the president. I don't think he'll ever see that, but hey, it's out there on the internet. And then I started doing some work with our local crisis hotline. And this hotline is called, it's the Alachua County Crisis Center, and it's for people who have been victims of domestic abuse, sexual assault victims, rape victims. Anybody who needs it can call. And it started to bring up these feelings again, and I was talking to my husband about it, and he said, you know what, you need to just write, because you were the happiest, and you felt like you were getting your feelings out when you were writing. So I decided to write a poem about one of the instances that my father abused me, and I wasn't going to post it on Facebook. I was just going to, another one of my friends, she does a lot of advocating for victims of sexual assault, and she runs her own blog, and I had emailed her and was like, yo, put this on your blog, but can you make it anonymous, because I don't want anything to do with this. And so she goes, are you sure? It's beautiful. It's awesome. And initially I said, yes, I'm sure. But then I started to think about all of the other girls, boys who have been abused, who are being abused. And I thought, you know what, there's no reason why I can't, put my name on this. And but I never said my father's name. I just alluded to the fact that my abuser was my father. I never outright called him by his name. And so that was back in April. And then this Me Too movement happened. And one of my other friends, her name's Emily, she shared her story on Facebook. She actually went on Facebook Live and was talking about it. And it just really, I don't want to put her business out, but our stories are similar in the sense that she was abused by a family member as well. And she was like, this, and this happened. She said their names. I was completely inspired. And that was 2 weeks ago. And I just recently was like, okay, like, really, Heaven, if you put this out, who's going to see it? And then my friend Emily says to me, why are you so afraid to put this out there? And it clicked. If I put this out there, if I put this on a blog for the entire world to see, people are going to know that my father, John Settler, abused me, and people were going to think less of him. And part of me, I guess, was trying to protect him because, he's my dad. I don't want people to think any less of him. But the thing is he had the choice, and I didn't. And so I decided to just write. And I wrote out the first instance of my father abusing me. I stated his name, and then I closed the blog with saying, hey, if anybody has stories that they want to share from their Me Too movement, if they need somebody to talk to, if they need somebody to just vent to email me. And I left my email at the end of the blog. And I also said that if anybody wants to write for the blog, to let me know, and, we'll get something taken care of. And since then, that was the 29th of October, and I've gotten about a handful of stories, a couple who have said I can share it on my blog, and a couple have said, I just needed somebody to tell. And it's been humbling getting all the love from people saying, we didn't know your father was this kind of individual. We're so sorry. We should have seen it. And it's those people who say we should have seen it that kind of make me a little sad. Like, how could you have seen it? And yeah, I'm super excited at the fact that this Confessions of Survivor seems to be taking off, but kind of a little sad that people, that it's not just, some actress or some politician on TV saying that they've been abused. It literally is everybody, it seems like. And so I guess, this movement needs to continue. It needs to be talked about. Incest is abuse as well. Like, that's another thing that I was afraid to share, is people talk about all of the Me Too movements or stories that I've seen. They're all, I was at a party and this happened, which I'm not trying to, diminish that at all. That's awful. but nobody that I talk to or have seen on Facebook has mentioned that they experienced this at the hands of somebody that was supposed to protect them.
Wow.
And that, and by me putting myself out there, by me kind of, ripping the Band-Aid off, I've had, like I said, I've had a handful of stories come in, but a couple of those stories have been people who have been abused by family members, and it really, it's sick. But I'm also glad that they felt that they could share that with me, and they trusted me with their stories as well.
Wow. And we, guys, you're listening to Sipping Tea with MBG. We thank you for sharing your story with us. We get that, it's a fact. The definition of child sexual abuse is so much broader than most people realize. One of the major things, a couple of things that you said that I kind of want to ask you about and expand upon is because the anger is something that I think we think children and adults are just angry because they're mean, and the reality is that there is something there. So I'm wondering if when people say they should have known, is it because of the anger? Your anger was different. You were getting mad at the littlest thing. Everything was a problem. Do you feel like people knew and didn't speak up or ask you? Have you ever felt that way?
I think, there were a couple of instances where, my mom sat down and was, she sat down at the edge of my bed like mothers do, and she was like, why are you, she would say, like, why are you upset? And I would be like, hey, my food's cold, or John didn't turn off his television or didn't turn the volume down on his television, and now it's super loud. Like, it just was, I don't know. And my little brother is autistic, but he's kind of high on the spectrum. Like, you wouldn't know anything was wrong with him until you, spoke to him. And I used to take a lot of my anger out on him because I felt like, yeah, he should know I like my food at this, temperature. He should know that I like to be asleep by 9:30, and he doesn't need to be going in and taking a shower then. But, my mom would say things like, you should just have more patience, or you shouldn't be bothered by little things, Heaven. And I don't think she necessarily knew that the abuse was going on. I think she knew that something was going on. But me being the kid that I was, my father told me, if you tell anybody, your mother included, I'll divorce her and it'll be all your fault. And not to hear that at 9 years old, when you come from a Christian home, and divorce isn't okay in God's eyes, which is what we were taught. I thought of meeting my Maker at 80 plus years old, going, I'm sorry, God, I'm the reason my parents split up, like that. I had these thoughts at 9 years old, and the fact that I couldn't share them was why I was so angry. But no, I don't think that I thought people knew, because it started so young. I thought that was normal for dads to do that. And that grooming phase. That's exactly it. And I remember, I think I was like 12, or I think I was 12, and I was at a sleepover, and one of my friends' dad came in and said goodnight and left. And I was like, I had asked her, I said, is he going to come back in later? Like, what's, and she thought she looked at me like I had, 27 eyes on my face. And then I realized, holy snot, this is not normal. And there's a reason why he's been telling me not to say anything to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of that, like, vicious circle where you're, a lot of people who have been abused as children will say their abuser made threats to them, and they don't realize why they're threatening them until they realize that they were being groomed. And I forgot where I was going with that.
It's okay. I think, and I want to be as careful and as cautious as possible, because I definitely understand the constant recovering and the constant getting through and getting over. Because when you've been through that type of abuse, and for me, I'm speaking from that therapeutic aspect. I can't say I've experienced it because I haven't, but I'm speaking from that therapeutic aspect and being able to speak to the signs and symptoms, because the reality is that childhood sexual abuse is a health problem. And people don't want to address it as such. It's a crime and a health problem at the same time. And so with that, how has that affected you in its entirety relative to mental health, sexual health? Because what I heard you say was that when you and who is your current husband, went up to, I think, the old warehouse, that you thought you were going to make out. And the first thing I thought about was, I wanted to ask you, do you feel like, did it cause you to be hypersexual? Or did it decrease that sexual desire?
So there are two different, like you just said, there are two different ways somebody who is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse goes. You can either go hypersexual, or you can be completely cut off and not want to have anything to do with that. In high school, I had one boyfriend. I was more focused on my studies than I was the opposite sex. And I didn't have any interest at all. Meanwhile, my friends are like, oh, she still has her V card. They would make fun of me. But I just didn't want to go there. And then I hit my college years, and I think I kind of did a 180. And I wanted it all the time, and it felt weird to me. I actually was engaged prior, and I slept with this man, and I thought because I had slept with him, that meant I had to marry him, which is what we are taught in this Christian world. Well, the Christian thing is you don't have sex until you're married. I thought because I had already had sex, I was supposed to marry him. obviously that didn't happen. But after him, I did the 180 and was like, it was, my mom like had to sit me down and was like, look, you're kind of out of control. And I thought she was just being an annoying mother. But in reality, like, she just was looking out for me. And, it's funny, you also talked about, you said it's a health problem, and that's very, very, very true, because it's a proven fact that 90% of people who have chronic illness have been abused. They have been, not chronic illness, chronic pain. They have been abused sexually.
You're right. You are absolutely right.
And I didn't know this until I was at my pain I have chronic pain, believe it or not. And I was at my pain doctor, and he recommended me going to a pain therapist and pain psychologist, not pain therapist, pain psychologist. And she actually told me that fact, and literally it all just kind of clicked. I was like, everything makes sense. And I don't want to get too TMI on you guys, but I've had a slew of health problems my entire life. And there are times, like when I'm at the female doctor, that she has to actually stop her exam because a lot of scarring and tissue that's built up over the years it causes me pain. And I actually remember a couple of years ago I got a really bad kidney stone, and they actually had to go in and take it out through surgery. And my doctor, who was a male, or is a male, asked me afterwards if I had ever been abused. And I said, yes, why do you ask? And he shook his head, and he got real sullen, and I saw tears in his eyes. He said, I just was curious, and I was hoping I was wrong. And that's all he said. So I don't know what's going on with my kidneys or what, but you're exactly right. It is both a health issue and an issue, period.
So, and I want to step back and let Adam, Amber J, and Antoine, the confidential informant, I want them to step in. But before that, I do want to say that for those of you out there listening, once again, you're listening to Sipping Tea with MBG. Be mindful of your children, your teenagers, even your friends and adult relatives. A lot of people don't realize that alcoholism and substance abuse problems are a common consequence for adult survivors of child sexual abuse. A lot of people don't realize that unexplained anger and the consistent need to rebel, they are also emotional signs of adolescent, teenage, and adult survivors of child sexual abuse. The biggest thing, in my opinion, from the outside looking in, is that people have gotten too comfortable with not speaking, with not telling the truth about what has transpired. And because of that, we have a lot of angry, hurt, sick people walking around. Shout out to you, Heaven, for telling your story and for being bold enough to put it out there and to name him, because you took every piece of power that you had ever given him when you named him.
Mm-hmm.
Because while you were classifying him as your father, he had the power. But when you named him, you stripped him of everything he had. You are to be commended. You are a survivor. You are a hero for so many different people. And hopefully, those of you that are out there listening, male and female, hopefully you will start to look at yourself and try to figure out, when am I going to tell the truth? When am I going to accept that I am damaged? I have been abused and I need somebody to help me now. It is never too late. Because what I'm hearing you say is that it took for you to find the man that you were going to spend the rest of your life with for you to get help. And you don't seem like you regret getting help.
I don't. I really don't. And yeah, you made me cry.
It's all right. I'm angry and I'm passionate at the same time, and I'm mad as hell because there are so many people walking around hurting right now because people will not be honest with themselves.
Yeah.
Parents have made adults keep secrets. Families have made adults and children keep secrets. And I'm angry because those issues continue to fester in the community. Those issues have caused nothing but hurt from babies to grown adults. There are people in nursing homes who are mad as hell because they were abused by a family member. So I'm sorry that I may sound abrasive, but I'm mad as hell because you're one of the very few that will tell the complete truth about what has transpired in your life so that you can be helped, so that you can help others. Because the reality is that if you're broken, you can't help nobody.
Yep.
And I'm gonna step back because I'm angry.
Sorry. You're exactly right. If you're broken, how can you expect to fix somebody else?
My hat's off to you. My hat's off to you because you took that step. You did what you needed to do. My hat is off to you. Adam, I got to step back.
I just, I think that's super important, Heaven talked about, having to write her stuff down and talking to people about it and just getting it out there. Even if you're not, telling the full story yet or, fully empowering yourself, just that small step to get somewhere is so powerful, because when you're hiding behind things and when you're not being yourself, it's crippling. You're crippling yourself, and you're allowing those people that have done harm to you to continue to cripple you, and just slowly getting your story out there and slowly, telling people what you've been through is freeing.
It really is.
I definitely commend you on that. I just, yeah.
I guess, yeah. Guys, this is Sipping Tea with MBG, and this thing is real. Sorry we didn't do a trigger warning in the beginning, but sometimes shock therapy is the best medicine. It's the best treatment. It's the best intervention. Because the reality is this: self-reflection, self-evaluation, and truth is necessary. You can't keep walking around knowing you're hurting and hurting other people in the process because you have too much pride to accept I am broken, I'm jacked up, and I need help. That's all I can say is help.
No.
Help. Help. You know, therapy is not a bad thing. I think
sure isn't.
People feel like if they have to go to therapy, they've lost control. But no.
That's exactly how I felt. That's exactly how I felt.
Wow.
If I go in and if I tell somebody this story, if I tell somebody what happened, I can't control the situation, and I need to control the situation because I didn't have control of the original situation, so it's time for me to control this situation.
Wow. Yep.
Well, this is Amber J speaking in, and again, like Lily Mae has said, I do commend you, Lady Heaven, for sharing your experience in every way possible, and I can also say me too in regards to sexual abuse or sexual harassment. I wouldn't want to say throughout my childhood, but periods in my childhood and into the adult form. I just want to say that as of now, because you said so much when you was giving your testimony, and you're still continuing to overcome, even though it's a continual process. And it's a continual healing process because it's still going to hurt because you're pretty much cleaning your wounds, as I like to say. But you putting yourself out there and naming who hurt you by name is taking away the power. And as much as abuse in any form is a disgusting thing, abuse is also a power thing for the predator. And by you snatching that away, as Lily said, by you naming your father, who the person was that harmed you, who was supposed to protect you, it is giving power back to you. And it is you taking control of your healing process. Therapy is a good thing, and as far as me, they'll tell you I'm like the spiritual person in the whole group, but what you experience when you went to therapy is what in the spiritual group we would call past lives. So you like going back and actually taking control, so to speak, and cursing and going all out is what you wanted to do but couldn't do, and yeah, you were able to do, and it's making you even more stronger to speak. And you'll keep speaking to the point where tears won't even flow anymore. You'll just start speaking with more conviction and helping other ladies and gentlemen come out and say, you know what, this person by name did this to me, and I'm going to take control back by starting my healing process. Healing is never a pretty thing. It's always going to be ugly and disgusting. And it's said that this is so prevalent, yet tolerated and not dealt with at the same time. And that's just from what's going on in the news and from people around me that have expressed their stories, and they're not, either they don't want to deal or they're not ready to deal, so their dealing is, of course, alcohol or some form of drug. Excuse me. But, I commend you. I commend you wholeheartedly, and keep pushing and keep speaking and keep being that vessel, because even though you may come across people who might be scared now, you're still inspiring somebody to speak up, whether it's even approaching that person and letting them know, I remember what you did, and, just having that courage. That's what it takes at the end of the day, is to have courage to step forward and to say, this happened to me, nothing's wrong with me, I still love me, I just got some healing to do, and I'm going to move forward and grow from this. I'm going to learn what it is to really be loved and truly be loved. I'm going to go to therapy and not be afraid of it, because therapists help you see what you may be blind to. I had therapy when my father passed, and I didn't realize how much negativity was around me in regards to death that was going on during that time. And I don't know why there's this stigma of, the whole we go to therapy, we'll lose control. But it's just a natural thing. It's a human thing to always have control. But once we have that self-realization, okay, I need to get it together, and I can't do it by myself, then that's when light bulbs start clicking, and you're not afraid anymore. So once you have strength and power not to be afraid anymore, and other people see that in you, they're like, okay, well, I'm going to go to therapy too. Or they'll come up to you and say, what is it that you did? And then maybe they'll get off the drugs or not drink anymore or not do reckless behavior to cover up the root of the problem. Because I always say there's a root to everything. When you were lashing out, that was nothing but branches and leaves to the root. So once you get down to the root and cut the root off, then everything else shows, and you're like, oh, that's why. Some people might say, oh, that's why she was mad. I wish I would have known. And you say that's kind of like a human nature thing to say. I wish I would have known, because you feel bad for the person. But how could you? Because a sociopath don't show that he's a sociopath. They're charming, they're personable. So an abuser won't show they're an abuser. They'll front. But behind closed doors is another issue. Like I said before, as disgusting as abuse is also a power thing to the predator. As long as they know they have power, that's what they gloat off of. It's a power issue. And abusers abuse because of whatever happened to them. And I'm sorry that, it was a person that protected you, that was supposed to protect you, but now you're protecting yourself by taking back what should have been there from the beginning. And
right.
That's my 5 cents.
You're exactly right. And I want to commend you for saying Me Too as well, because it's just so I told a story on my Me Too story about somebody who was using the Me Too movement by saying Me Too, but this happened, or I got therapy, or I survived and I picked myself back up, and she used the words, it's a sad, sick way to get attention. And I just wrote, if by me saying Me Too helps somebody else say Me Too or tell their story, I'm going to shout it from the rooftops. And it's not a sad, sick way to get attention. People need to realize that this is a problem. It's an epidemic, and it's been going on for hundreds of years.
And that's true. That's true. And it's not a race thing or gender thing. It's a human thing. Everybody in a rich family or a low income family, it's abuse happening everywhere. Whether you're child or an adult, you're experiencing some form of abuse. Not everybody, but it's just so prevalent. But it's as prevalent as it is it's even more prevalent that it's hush-hush. That's what's so amazing about this thing. And I don't know where the turn happened to where at one point, people would speak out. You would see rallies. Many years back, I would see rallies and people would speak out about abuse. And then all of a sudden, now I'm seeing articles where justice isn't being served, and it's like it's an excuse for it, and it's tolerable now. When at one time, it was you couldn't look upon that. It was, it's society changed all of a sudden. When did that become a normalcy? And I mean, everybody, to be funny, we'll put everything on the president, but now it just becomes, it became a normalcy out of nowhere. At one point in time, when you hear somebody being, abusive in some form, it was like, oh my gosh, that's what? And people will kind of speak out. Now it's like hush, 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 like extremely hush. And as far as like the black community, we struggle on talking not only about mental health but sexual abuse as well. But it's for some reason it's become normal to be quiet about it all. Like, okay, well, yeah, he did rape the girl. He just got a month. It's all good. I mean, he's a good student, and he was an athletic, and now this whole thing's just ruined his career. So what? Why is that a concern? So that her life isn't a concern? Her trauma to her body, her post-traumatic stress to her body is not a problem anymore? What?
Well, a lot of people have been bought. Their silence has been bought.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people's silence has been bought. A lot of people have that hanging over their head that they're gonna tear up the family, they're gonna break the family. You know what I'm saying? And the other thing is, a whole lot of people just walk around mad at the world and will not talk about it. And it's reality. That's the reality. That's what happened.
Yep.
That's exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened.
Yeah, that people, you're right. A lot of people just walk around mad at the world, and that's the new normal, is to be mad at the world.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, like Amber said, you're not getting to the root of the problem. You're just watering the branches and the leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And then they wonder why they got heart issues and high blood pressure and stuff like that, and on 15 different medicines, because you got an issue that's been brewing for 15,000 years that you don't want to deal with, or you're refusing to deal with.
Yeah, and that's not even just sexual abuse. That's so many things that's prevalent right now. That's people are going around angry and they're not dealing with the issues.
Right.
Well,
and hey everybody, this is Antoine with MBG. I just wanted to chime in because I appreciate you first and foremost, because you have a courage that a lot of people and families don't have, because they have to actually keep quiet in order to keep something under wraps to protect someone that did something to someone else that was wrong. And I don't like that, because that's a part of the problem, because that gets passed on to generation and the next generation, because that's what they were taught. So now we're in 2017 and that's still going on, and we're getting more and more stories. So it's become more of a common thing. So we don't really address it as much, but it's still an issue that needs to stop. So I appreciate you coming forward in a time and space where we're at now, where people just want to sweep it underneath the rug to keep the family safe and keep them in a good light, rather than attack the issue, because it affects you in the long run.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
It kind of brought up an interesting point, because when we think about it, like nowadays, how to phrase this, like nowadays it's really a lot more about the individual person. When we're talking about jobs and our friends, it's about the individual person. Whereas back then, when my mom was younger, when my grandmother was, younger, it was the family name.
Family.
Yep. So when you heard about those Robertsons over there, and they had a bunch of bad kids or whatever, and they can have a cousin or whatever that perfect student, whatever, good grades, was always, just a good person, but because he's associated with that family, they didn't want to have nothing to do with them. And so I think that kind of comes into that, because that's what it was about back then. And I think that's why more people are talking about it now, because it's more about the individual person rather than back then. It was all about the family.
I think another thing is that you get cases like the Brock Turner case, where this poor woman was reduced to 20 minutes of action, and then all of this backlash, they're putting him on a pedestal, basically, like Amber said, or maybe it was Lily, I'm sorry, like somebody said, he's a star athlete, he's a good kid, like he's this outstanding citizen, why should we believe you? And so I think that, not only are we conditioned to think, hey, he's just mad at the world, it's normal, but it's also, if I say something, is somebody going to question me? Is somebody going to tell me something like, you're making this up, or you remembered it wrong, or you did this, and this? And that's part of why I didn't want to come forward at first, is because I didn't want somebody to say, this happened when you were 9, why can't you get over it? Or maybe you remembered wrong, or your dad is such a good guy, I don't think he'd ever do something like that. You're just a poor, angry daughter who's mad at her dad, and so you're making stuff up. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I completely understand. It's like, I had a thought and it ran. It's kind of like, why should anybody feel any backlash for saying, hey, I was abused by this person? And see, we so caught up on image, because your dad was in the church, which that already rubbed me wrong. He a deacon in the church or whatever he was doing. Church. Oh, they would never do that. The devil is a liar. But we're so stuck on image. Image is the problem. So we see somebody who's of high caliber, like with the guy. Oh, he's an athlete. He was doing this, and so it didn't dawn on you that for 1 second he could do such a terrible act. Same thing with Ray Caruth. Ray Caruth had his pregnant girlfriend killed to try to get rid of the child, which ended up living. But he's such a great athlete. I mean, he's all-star this, all-star that. He's doing all these runs. He's getting these yards. They're taking these people to the Super Bowl, whatever. He wouldn't do such a thing. Why? Because he got all these awards. He has all these achievements that make somebody a good person and incapable of doing evil. No. We have to stop really looking at image. That's what the problem is, image, what somebody's looking like or perceived, they can't do no wrong. That's how people get fooled. And then it's sad when somebody is harmed and they try to seek out help and reach out for help, they'll quickly criticize them versus the person that did that.
Absolutely.
And it should never be that way. I mean, granted, you do have people out here who now get psychology on it, who have Munchausen syndrome, who like, attention seeking. That's one thing. But somebody legit who's been abused and the symptoms are there, you can tell it, and they're literally crying for help in so many behavioral ways, and it's somehow, some way their fault because this person just glows from head to toe, so they would never, ever, ever in their life do something like that. Or they come from good family or good parents. What does that mean? It's baffling and it's sad that we're in a society where the victim is wrong for being a victim.
And there it is.
He or she should have just did everything precautionary to prevent what happened. What kind of mindset is that? But that's the type of, that's what we in a society, that the victim is wrong for being the victim.
Right, and I think that comes from the people, more so concerned with the person of stature, more so the victim, because in the world we live in, it's so hard to get to these certain points that's on the camera. So we just kind of sort of focus in on them because that's who we always see on the camera. So we're more so like, where did this girl come from? Because this person made it through, let's say they made it through college. They had a bunch of trophies. They got to the NFL. They had a great 2 years. They just re-signed their contract. Then the story comes up. And then that's why the people start to question it. But at the same time, nobody ever, and I even my friends, when we look at sports, nobody rarely goes and actually look at the victim side of the story. We only care about the athlete because they went through so many loopholes that most people dream to go through to get to a certain point. So it's just like, wow, this person is about to fall, and they did all X, Y, and Z, but nobody know how they got there and all the things they might have gotten away with because of that.
Right, and nobody's looking at the breeding of the predator, so to speak, because abusers, something happened to the abuser to start abusing. So it's like, okay, what happened? Were they abused, or were they given so many accolades and praised so much and not disciplined and thought they could be untouchable, as to why we have incidents going on like we do now?
And I will say, I did find out that my father had been abused, but that doesn't excuse what he did.
Right, right.
And initially when I had found out, I think at like 16 or 17, I was like, oh, okay, that doesn't excuse what he did, and that sucks for him, but what about me?
Right.
But that comes from, the situation happening and it's not being resolved.
Right, and that becomes a skill of will, as I always say, because if something happens to you, you have to think, okay, is this normal? And then if you find out it's normal, am I going to change it so it won't happen to the next person? Or this is normal, so I'm going to continue the process. It's like, yes, he was abused, and it doesn't excuse what he did to you. It never excuses what he did to you. But on his psychology, and, of course, it played a factor into it. Where it brings a question to my mind, tapping into the psychology background of me. It's like, okay, so he was abused and he abused you, so it's kind of like, well, where in the process of the adulthood did he think it was okay to continue that, or it was normal? When did he come across where it was not normal? You're in the church. It's in the Bible that's wrong. So where did it say it was cool for you to do that? Or again, like Adam said, was it something brewing that you just hadn't dealt with and you just let the feeling go on? That's the type of questions that'd be in my head from, those that have been abused and that continue the process. I know at one time it made me think it's normal, but where in your adulthood does it click to be like, you know what, this ain't normal, and I'm not going to continue this?
When I first married my husband, about 6 months into our marriage, I remember feeling really kind of like hopeless. And I came to him, and we had talked about having kids and whatnot beforehand, and I just came to him and I was like, look, this is what's going on in my head. You know, my dad was abused. There's a chance his father was abused. Like, what happens if do I even have kids? Like, is this going to happen to me? Am I going to have these thoughts? And he said, you are breaking the cycle by going to get help.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I think that, you know, by even just speaking his name, I am breaking the cycle, and I'm showing other people, you know, I've never met you guys in real life except Adam. You know, I'm showing them that this cycle is broken, and you can break the cycle too.
Right. And I totally agree. Once you have that realization moment, okay, this is not going to continue, and it stops with you, then, you know, you just continue, like I said, continue the healing process. There's always kind of that worry there, but that's a natural thing to feel, that worry, like, okay, I'm healing myself and this happened to me, but I'm still a little leery if I have kids, you know. I may have to have a discussion as to why they don't see their grandfather. You know, and even though that may open up something, it's still another thing to heal and to bring awareness and understanding to another generation and say, okay, this is not right. So if you have friends and you notice something or they tell you something, believe them and, you know, do what you can as a friend. Don't just feel guilt or, you know, you just give encouraging things on what they can do. And I've seen that to where, I know somebody who was being abused, and they actually, you know, had that discussion with their kids when they got older, and they were like, you know, Mom, why we don't see whoever? And then she has that conversation like, well, this is what happened. And they're shocked because, you know, they might have heard like, oh, Uncle so-and-so or Aunt so-and-so or whoever, you know, did this and did that. And the stories doesn't match up with what Mama is saying, and it's just shocking to see your mother hurt or somebody in your family hurt that tells you this is why this person doesn't come around because this is what happened. It brings awareness. To me, it brings awareness, and again, it stops the cycle, and just letting them know you have friends. This is what they say. If they say stuff to you, you see the behavior, you know, be that friend, be there for them, and get them to talk or tell somebody and seek therapy and possibly get some charges on these people and, you know, all of that. Because it's sad that, you know, we have, like Lily said, we have people in nursing homes still mad for something that happened to them 50 years ago, an abuse. 50 years ago. And, of course, the society back then is totally different what it is now, and they're still stirring in it.
Well, I think the reality is it sounds good, but is it really good? And y'all know that I try to be as transparent as possible, so I'm going to try to be as transparent as possible without putting anybody's business out there. But I can think of 3 people that I care a lot about right now, whom I would call friends. And I know within my heart that something happened to them, sexual abuse occurred in their life by someone close to them. And they won't talk about it. So when you say get people to talk about it or when you see behaviors, address it, you can address the behaviors, but if they don't want to talk, they're not going to talk. And so what happens? Once again, the vicious cycle of self-hate and anger continues. So, and I think that's why I'm tapped out, because I'm angry right now, because Heaven, you don't know us. And I think that's why I'm angry, because you don't know us. And you are putting it on the line and trying to help people, but the reality is that you are one of a few that are really trying to use your vulnerability to help others. And the fact that I'm sure you've helped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I pray that you can help many more. But how do we reach those who refuse to talk, who seemingly are mad at the world because they were wronged, and nobody knows, but nobody can know if you don't tell somebody?
Well, you just got to keep planting the seed. And just, as far as like Lady Heaven, just keep planting the seed, telling your story, planting the seed. Even though it's 5 today, it may be 20 tomorrow, and so forth and so forth. Just keep planting the seed. Like you said, not everybody's going to talk or want to talk, but at least the seed's been planted, and that's all we can do. Is just plant the seed, water a little bit, and just keep going. Because for those that need to hear and want the help are going to get the help and begin their healing process.
Right, and I think it's also important to, because like you said, it took me meeting the love of my life and him encouraging me to go to therapy to finally say, yes, this happened. Yes, it freaking sucks. But I think that if I had that friend in high school who knew I was angry, who knew something was wrong but never really asked, I think by being the person that plants the seed, by being somebody who is always open to talk, who just kind of puts a non-judgmental front out there, so to speak, I think that also contributes to people talking. So to all of your listeners, be that friend. Because just by you saying something as small as, I'm here if you ever need to talk, or I am willing to listen and not say a word, you can just talk. And be that non-judgmental open window, so to speak, or door. By doing that, by being that person, you're also planting the seed and helping somebody get help.
Wow. Thank you so much, Lady Heaven. Again, guys, this is Sipping Tea with MBG. This was a picture of good sweet tea. Nothing was in mine this time because I had to sip mine very, very slow and listen very, very carefully because this was a lot. And, again, thank you for having the courage to speak to some strangers and the world about your experience and encouraging somebody that may be going through or know somebody that may be going through to, help them along in their healing process to deal with, which is, I'll say, an epidemic, a silent epidemic. We have, the opiate epidemic and all these other epidemics going, but this one is a silent killer because it is killing people silently through health, as we mentioned before. But before we close out, I just want to get Adam and Antoine and Lady to say, and you, of course, Lady Heaven, to y'all give y'all information on where people can find you on social media. Lady Heaven, you go first.
So you can find me on social media at, hold on, sorry, Confessions of a Survivor 2.blogspot.com, and that's just where I write about my experiences. My name is Heaven Papendick, and I don't know that I'm searchable on Facebook, but if you email me and you want to be friends on Facebook, cool. I would love to get to know you.
Cool. Go ahead, Adam.
As always, you can find me at Adam Newsom -MBG on Facebook, or you can email me at officialadamnewsom@gmail.com.
Okay, Antoine, the confidential informant.
What's going on, everybody? Heaven, once again, I appreciate your story. I'm definitely going to follow you. Once again, this is Antoine on MBG. You can find me at _BlessedLoves on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find me at Antoine Johnson on Facebook.
And Lily Mae.
All right, guys, it's your girl Lily Mae, and you can always find me on any Motivational Brown Girls Instagram, Facebook page. I have a public page. It's Lily Mae official MBG. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram it's Sanaj_MBG_finesse. On Twitter it's LM_MBG_Sanaj. And once again, thank you so much, Lady Heaven. You really did the daggone thing.
Thank
yes,
you guys.
Ma'am. Of course. Yes, ma'am. Of course, it's Amber J. You can follow me on Instagram, Forbidden, FORE, Bidden_fruit, FORRT. You can follow Motivational Brown Girls on Instagram. That's motivational_brown_girls. That's with a Y and a Z. If you don't know by now, you can follow us on Twitter, MBG_0716 on Twitter. And go like and leave a review on our Facebook, Motivational Brown Girls, of course, all day long, every day. Again, this is Amber J., my co-host Lily Mae in the building. This is MBG Speaks 101, and as always, MBG listens.
And then we speak.
Good night, y'all.